Hi guys, Literary Prepper back with you again. So we are looking at having a federal election this year. Yay! Super incredibly not exciting. Basically means that we get to once again rock up for a national roll call and do our patriotic duty to vote in the least crappy party that we can think of. So one thing that bugs me election after election or anytime there's some sort of party disruption or whatever is when people start talking about a change in leadership. So before we jump into who the main people are and why you may want to vote for one party rather over another, let's just go right back to basics just to begin with. Because for a lot of people out there, this may be their first time voting. Congratulations, welcome on board, and hooray, you live to be 18 and over and eligible to vote. Go you. So a lot of you would have either never actually been given an introduction to voting aside from the obnoxious people that stand outside the school halls and hand out the paperwork. And a lot of you would have received information from teachers at school who really, probably don't quite understand the system as well as they ought to. Probably because they themselves were, potentially educated by the obnoxious people handing out the paperwork at the polling booth. But in Australia, we basically have two main parties. So, you're looking at the Liberals and Labor. So we're all familiar with seeing those little guys fight with each other on the TV. We are divided up into electorates, and each electorate votes for someone to represent their electorate. Electorates are divided up by population, not by size, so you have a rough number of people inside each electorate. So you vote for someone who you think has the ideas that will be representative of the people that are in your surrounding area. All seems well and good, but you sort of gather up all those little people and you count the numbers, and at the end of the night, usually sort of a couple days later, they do the official announcement, and you will see that if people in the electorates or the seats add up to a certain number, then they'll say this party overall is in power because they have the most people taking up the most seats. Seems fairly simple. Where things sort of start to get a little bit grey is that we don't vote for the party leader. The party votes for the party leader. So when we have things like over the past 15 plus years where rather than each election having a new leader, it's every couple of years it seems like someone is taking over someone else's place, and I've had 47 different leaders or whatever. That's you're not voting for that person. You don't vote for Julia Gillard, you don't vote for Kevin Rudd, you don't vote for Tony Abbott, you don't vote for Scott Morrison, you don't vote for Turnbull or whoever the hell is in charge at the time, sort of thing. You vote for the party, period. You vote for your person, for your electorate, your local member. That's all you vote for. So you really, I know it's frustrating because there is that lack of wider control over who is in power, but you vote for the party and the party policies, and the general agreement is that the party will uphold those policies. It doesn't matter whose name is on the actual little letterhead that says Prime Minister. They're all supposed to follow the same thing. So that's how it all goes. So when people get frustrated because they didn't vote this person in, well, unless you're in that person's electorate, you didn't vote them in. So that's that little rant over and done with. So who's who? Well, the first little people that I want to look at, big guys in charge at the moment, are the Liberals. So traditionally speaking, the Liberal Party are the ones who look after business. They're sort of the more sort of capitalist end of the spectrum. They're the ones that like to sort of bring in different sort of reforms on taxation and cuts for big business and incentives for business people and all the rest of it. Labour, generally, are more socialist. They're the ones who are all about the unions and the workers and the plebs, basically. So when you're looking at the Liberals on their website, the Liberals claim that, let's go to something Liberal specific. Oh, that's right, there isn't anything Liberal specific. Let's go to Labour. Oh, look, pretty much the same thing. So let's compare the two. So let's see. The Liberals, well, they're talking about making things like power and electricity more affordable, but so is Labour. Okay, so apparently the Liberals are also bringing in childcare subsidies, which will make it easier for women to enter the workplace. They've got a few vague policies about putting more money into schools and TAFE and universities, which looks exactly the same as what Labour have on their page. I will say that the Liberals actually look like they have a professional page that they paid someone to make, whereas Labour look like, it's a year 7 sort of ICT project. So they're pretty much the same sort of thing when you look at a lot of their strategies. They both want to crack down on people who are misusing visas, and they both want to sort of claim that they're reworking taxation to suit, the little Australian people. They both want to say that they support families. They both want to say they're creating jobs. Both parties are claiming that they are going to increase the number of apprentices that are working on public infrastructure. They both claim that they're going to make everything easier and that they're going to lower unemployment. Both of them say that they want to crack down on dog bludgers and people who are rorting the system. That's all well and good. So the only real difference that I can see between these two parties is that the Liberals at the moment have a really big push to try to help farmers in drought conditions, to try to sort of make life a little bit easier for them. So at the moment they have a $4 billion drought project for farmers. And the Liberals want to make it easier for farmers to access business loans. They want to make it easier for them to access loans to try to build up fencing, and they want to work on water reticulation and food storage so that they can feed and water their animals and their crops and whatever when things do sort of get a little bit dry. We're in a very dry place, probably going to happen. And of course they want to sort of help out with pest control. The more specific sort of things that Labour get into, so they do have a few specific things that they talk about on their website. So one of them is they want to stop live export. So immediately they want to stop the northern summer sheep trade, and then eventually they want to just completely phase out livestock exports altogether, because frankly it's inhumane, and the only reason why we do it is so that we can sell sheep to Muslim countries so that they can slaughter them halal style. In Australia we have halal butchers, we have halal abattoirs, so there's really no reason why it should be exported live, aside from the fact that that's what people overseas want to pay for, and it's just cruel. It really is just cruel. There's no reason for it. Oh, and both parties it only really says it on Labor's website, but the Liberals are sort of for it as well. Both of them pushing for Australia to become a republic. Look, there's pros and cons both ways. Personally, I would side on the country staying as part of the Commonwealth for a number of reasons. Why it hasn't happened sooner is there's no real reason why we ought to leave, but then there's also very few reasons why we ought to stay. It's just kind of, sometimes it's better the devil you know sort of thing. There have been a number of countries recently that have had a similar sort of debate and they've decided the same thing: let's just stick with the Commonwealth. It doesn't stop anything, it doesn't change anything, but it's really not something that you ought to be sticking your vote for. It's just background chatter, and it's been that way for many, many years. So those are the two major parties. It's pretty much flip a coin because they're pretty much both the same, except that you can see, if you look back on the budget charts since the beginning of time, a Labor government will always try to bring in something that will make life easier for people, and they will run the budget into debt. And then the Liberals will come along and they'll try to get it to surplus, and then Labor will run it down into debt. Debt is not always a bad thing. However, you do have to be careful you don't get into too much debt. You also don't want to go the other way where you don't fund anything. It's a balancing act. Those are those guys. Personally, I don't think anyone ought to be voting for them outright. One of them is going to get in because of the size of them, but you shouldn't be voting for them outright. Two of the minor parties that you will see always popping up on your ballot papers. I say always, I mean the last few years sort of thing, that minor parties come and go, unfortunately. But the Greens have been relatively stable for a long time. These guys worry me. They have an agenda, that's why they call themselves the Greens. So they basically want to protect the oceans, the rivers, the forests, and the reefs. They want to ban fracking, and they want to phase out single-use plastics. They also want to ban political donations and lobbying so that big companies in the background can't act as the puppeteer for Australia's politics. So they want everything to be more democratic so that people decide what to do. Not a bad thing. They also somehow, and this is where it sort of starts to sort of come a cropper, because they've got some ideas that are a little bit too big to do within a 4-year period, and a little bit too big to do within a couple of budgets. You're looking at either very long-term plans, or you're looking at Santa Claus coming along and just granting you wishes. So the first thing they want to do is create a not-for-profit, publicly owned power company with a focus on renewable energies. So they want to get rid of coal, and they don't want to go down the road of fracking or anything like that. So doesn't say anything on their website about how they're going to pay for that, but that's what they want to do. They want a publicly owned power company so that foreign investors don't control what Australians pay for electricity, and they want it to be environmentally friendly. They want an extra $500,000 per year put into, wrong line. They want 500,000 more public housing houses. So they don't say where that money's going to come from, and they don't say what areas that's going to affect, but somehow we're going to come up with 500,000 more public housing houses. I'll leave that one alone. Let's see, and they want national standards for renters' rights. So they want to end what they call a no grounds eviction. They want to limit the amount that your rent can go up within a specified period of time, and they want renters to have more freedom. So what they have going on in, I believe in Victoria, or I'm not sure about New South Wales at the moment, they have it so that, I don't know if it's already been changed, if it's just, an idea that's constantly being floated. They want to force landlords to be okay with pets in all houses. Now, things like that, statements like that, on the face of it, seem rather benign. I have a dog. I know a lot of other people that have, pets and things that also find it difficult to sort of work around, renting agreements and all the rest of it. But if you're renting somebody else's house, you don't own that house. So you're basically saying that you agree to pay them for you to live there and look after the place. And I know some people who have pets who have not done the right thing and have caused a lot of damage to people's property. The other thing is that people don't consider people with allergies. I have a really, really bad cat allergy, and cat dander, which is like the skin particles and things that people react to when they breathe it in or when they come into physical contact with it, that can stay in carpet for up to 4 years. So for all you delightful people out there who want to sneak in pets when your lease says pet free, or it's just a cat, it doesn't matter. It really does when you have allergies. So if somebody says they don't want pets in their home, that house may not be a permanent rental property. That may be a house that they plan on living in themselves one day. So you can't just go out and say this has to be a blanket rule for everything, because not all landlords are rich, people with 50 million houses that they're renting out. Some people rent out their home when they go on holidays, and some people, they were just really, really careful, and that's, a legitimate income stream for them. Because you have like a rental property, that does not mean that you're rich or well off by any means. And the fact that you can't just ask somebody to leave, first of all, you've got to give them a specified time according to the lease anyway. You can't just rock up and say, get out of my house. And it would be counterintuitive anyway, because you're basically saying that you will be foregoing that income, which is the whole reason for renting it out anyway. But if you want to do work on that house, if you've had some sort of personal emergency and you have to move into that house as instead of those people, it's your property. So if your landlord, for example, something happens, there's an illness in the family, or maybe they themselves have family who are in an emergency situation, you can't just have a blanket law for everyone. They also want to sort of, and this is quoting directly from their website, wind back unfair tax breaks for investors. So basically they're talking about negative gearing and claims on capital gains tax. So look, that's a discussion for another day. If we don't have landlords and investors, then there will be an even bigger housing crisis. That's just cold hard fact, because there will always be people who need to rent because of whatever reason. So the Greens also want to devote $500 million per year to emergency housing and homelessness. So that's $500 million each year to emergency housing, to emergency shelters, things like that. But they don't actually say where that money is coming from. That's just a goal that they have. They want to make TAFE and university free, and they also want to pay students more. So if you're receiving youth allowance, Oz Study or AB Study, then they want to give you an extra $75 per week. As someone who has actually studied and had to claim these, student payments, that would really come in handy. I think it's completely wrong that students get paid less than the unemployed. They also used to have a book bonus that you could claim at the beginning of each semester, and they got rid of that just after I finished my first degree, and now you've actually got to apply for it as a loan. I was very grateful that my circumstances changed and I didn't have to rely on Centrelink for any of my postgraduate studies, but I know a lot of people that do and they have no other option, so yeah, it all adds up. So they're also talking about boosting uni funding by 10% per student. And when we're looking at, what do you call it? The boat people or whatever, asylum seekers, they want to close the camps and accept 50,000 new, they just say 50,000 new people. They don't say 50,000 refugees, they don't say 50,000 asylum seekers. It's just 50,000 new people into Australia permanently each year. Think about that. We're talking about the same people who want to protect the waterways, who want to protect national parks and forest land and all the rest of it, but they want 50,000 new people to be brought into the country each year. Getting back to the detention centres and the camps that they're talking about closing down, they don't exist anymore. The camps that they're talking about, the government opened the doors and let these people out, so they are free to walk around Manus and Nauru and be as citizens of those islands. The government is in the process of trying to find countries to take these people, but the very firm stance that the government is taking is if they allow these people into Australia, then it will encourage more people to come by boat, which will mean that more people will die at sea, and it will mean that the people smugglers will continue to get rich, and it's not what they want to encourage at all. It's you don't want to be encouraging illegal immigration, but all they want to look at is the sad faces of all the potential little kiddies. Anyway, that's a different rabbit hole. So that's the Greens. The last party that I want to look at, and the reason why I'm doing 4 is because they're 4 of the bigger ones that you hear in the news all the time. Again, you vote for your electorate. So in your electorate, if there are minor parties that don't make national headlines, or if there's a really good independent, research them, talk to them, look at their website, call or write to their office and ask them any sort of questions. But right now, looking at One Nation as the last party that we're looking at. So One Nation are very protectionist in a lot of their policies. So they are very anti any free trade agreement that is detrimental to Australia. They are very anti-foreign ownership. So they basically believe that Australia should be Australian owned. What a concept. That's their main sort of thing, is trying to make it so that, basically everything stays in Australian hands. They also have this really, really interesting taxation concept where rather than having all these different tax levels that we've got going on, they do not want the GST increased. They want it to stay the same. But they want everyone and everything to be taxed at something like 2%. So that would mean, your sort of absolute bottom of the rung earners would pay 2%. Your national corporations who at the moment, or international corporations who are at the moment not paying anything, would pay 2%. So your businesses, your corporations, your individuals, everything, 2% across the board. And because you would be charging people who at the moment don't pay anything 2% of everything they earn, that they are now just taking completely offshore and siphoning money out of the country, it's going to balance out. So that's where they stand on tax. They also want an ID card for all Australians. So not in a creepy Big Brother kind of way, but so that when you do things like if you apply to Centrelink or Medicare or do anything else involved with government services, they can identify that you are you, and that, you know, someone hasn't just stolen your Medicare card so they can buy a whole heap of, you know, cheap drugs to send overseas. They also want to make sure that people aren't, you know, falsely claiming things like Centrelink when they shouldn't be, because, you know, periodically they find people who somehow have gotten around the service, and yeah, they're claiming multiple payments for different bits and pieces, so they want to crack down on that. So One Nation are also one of the only parties that I've found that actually sort of say, this is a policy we want to implement, and this is how we're going to pay for it. So they want to raise the payment of the pension. So that's the aged pension, single parent pension, disability pension, and there's something else that they threw in there. But they want to raise that by $150 per fortnight per couple. And they want to fund this by reforming the gas tax law. So they're saying, you know, we're going to increase taxes so that we have more money to give to the people who genuinely need it, who can't work. Sounds reasonable enough. These guys are also in support of medicinal cannabis, and so they're in support of medicinal cannabis, but at the same time they really want to crack down on illegal drugs, particularly things like ice and methamphetamines. So they want to build more drug rehab facilities around the country, and they want to fund this, so they want to make criminals and addicts pay for their own rehab, which I think that is completely reasonable. You want to do something illegal, you pay for it. You want to get yourself into a crappy situation, you pay for it. So they're going to pay for this by asset seizures and money that is seized from drug-related crimes. They also want mandatory life sentences for anyone who is a drug manufacturer or one of these supply kingpin type people. So basically sort of finding out who is supplying the users and just lock them away, throw away the key, because these people don't have society's best interest at heart. They also want to give parents and judges the ability to force an addict minor into rehab. So if you have a 15-year-old who has gotten himself addicted to something because his best mate is a scumbag, then they want the parents and judges to have the ability to, you know, rehabilitate that person, so that, you know, that they're not completely lost, so that they can regain their life and, you know, do something meaningful. These guys also have a few policies that are really good for small businesses. So they recognize that small businesses are really big employers, and small to medium businesses, really big employers, and they want to basically make it so that there's a mandatory, like across the board, if you issue an invoice to someone, they have to pay it within 30 days. There's none of this, you know, just putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, because that really cripples people's cash flow. So they want to make it so that there's a 30-day payment period for all invoices, so that you know, small businesses actually have money to pay their staff and do all the things that they really need to be doing. And like everyone else, they want to increase uni positions and they want to sort of be all pro school and education and whatnot. So at this point in time, if you're a student and you want to claim some sort of subsidy or payment, then you get assessed based on your parents' income, and they want to change that so that you're assessed on your income, so that it's a little bit more fair, so that more people can actually get a hold of things that, you know, they're supposed to be getting. They want more university positions provided for domestic students and less for overseas students. So basically, like, you know, the classes need to be full of Australians before you start padding them out with foreign students. Again, fair enough. And they're very anti-university privatisation. They want to keep everything reasonable and affordable so that we become a stronger, more educated country. They are also the only party that I've found that has a policy on water security. We are a very dry continent, and you know, we need to really start talking about water security, because at the moment big companies are buying it and they're storing it, and they're charging a lot for it, and it's not fair. So we need to make sure that we have water, otherwise we're going to be in a situation where a lot of countries are finding themselves, you know, or will be finding themselves, where there's a worldwide water shortage and only rich people will be able to pay for water. They want to crack down on the exports of baby formula and other PBS subsidised products, so that taxpayers aren't subsidising medicines and products that are being sent overseas to non-Australians. And so that it's actually there for us to use. So things like the baby formula problem at the moment, some of those are prescription only hypoallergenic baby formulas that are just being stripped to send to China because they're worth so much over there, and it's actually really problematic for anyone who, you know, has troubles with breastfeeding or, you know, whatever. Even if you do try to breastfeed your child, if a child has an allergy, then they can be exposed to those allergens through breast milk. So it's not just simply a case of people taking the easy road or whatever. Sometimes these people have no other option. And, you know, if everything is being sent to China or similar countries, then they can't feed their babies. Let's see, what else? I think... Oh, and these people are also in support of normal Australians having access to guns for work, farming, for sport shooting, whatever they want to do. So they don't see anything wrong with Australians having guns, and they want to see harsher penalties for people who commit crimes and gun-related crimes, and they want to crack down on the people who are doing the wrong thing rather than penalising everyone. And of course the last one with One Nation, of course, is that they're very Australian focused, and they want to keep everything as, you know, the Judeo-Christian based country that we have worked really hard to try to maintain. And they're really anti-terrorism, anti-extremist Islamic focus. They want to basically maintain our way of life, because that's why so many people want to come over here, because they like our way of life. Very anti-radicalisation, but they've also got a really good policy where people say that they're anti-immigration. That's not true. Their whole thing is that they want to encourage population growth through Australians having kids, not through bringing random people in. But they also have this really good thing where they want to talk about, if one person leaves, we bring one in. So it's completely neutral. So, 10,000 people decide they want to live overseas, we'll bring 10,000 in from countries of our choosing who share our values. So that's one nation. All of them have different things on how they want to improve schools and hospitals and blah blah blah. It really does sound all of the same, and it's very, very vague, and it's very, very confusing. But those are sort of the very brief rundowns of 4 of the bigger parties that you will see running for this election. So, yeah, in a nutshell, Liberals, more business focused, Labour, more sort of union socialist focused, the Greens, a little bit airy-fairy, very environmental focused, very pro-mass immigration, and One Nation, very sort of protectionist and Australia focused. So that's, the starting point anyway. So for those of you who aren't sure on who you're voting for, that's a quick rundown of their policies. You get into secondary preferencing if you vote, so there's a number of boxes above the line and there's a lot of boxes below the line. Your secondary preferencing will be if you vote for party A and they don't get in, then that party will decide where their votes go. So if if you don't want that party to decide where your vote goes, number all of the boxes below the line. It's that simple. You don't vote, you don't have the right to bitch, and just remember how many people around the world and throughout history have died so that you could vote. That's all I have to say on that one. Just a quick rundown of who's running and what they believe. Not going to tell you who to vote for, that's obviously up to you guys, but that's all I have to say about that one. I'll talk to you guys later.